Good morning, everyone. All right. So next in line is to understand how we can store the values in a program. Like we have seen that there are two different types of data types. Whenever we represent certain data inside a program, so we have to use data types. Now, Apex programming have two different forms of data type as primitive and as object. Primitive is the fundamental data type, which includes everything, even the object as well. And what is going to be the use of S object? We are going to understand this in a topic called asynchronous programming. Right now, we would only concentrate on primitive data type. So primitive data type includes almost everything: numbers, characters, date, time, IDs, references, objects, URLs, geolocations. Whatever you have seen as a front-end data type, while if you are creating any field inside any object, whatever the data type you have seen over here, all of them are, first of all, they are called to be the front-end data type, and they are internally represented with any one form of primitive data type. So these all are the primitive data type, including object as well. That is what is the beauty of Apex program, that in Apex, you can even consider object as a data type, right? Let's see that. So now if I wanted to store certain values in my program, for example, I wanted to store some numbers. I wanted to store some dates, like date of birth, date of joining, date of relieving. I wanted to store certain string values, maybe a name or something else. So how I'm going to store, how I'm going to hold the values for which we require something called as a variable. So if I wanted to talk more technically on this, what is a variable? Variable is, first of all, it's a form of memory. It's a form of memory, right? Whenever you define a variable, you actually have reserved a certain amount of memory from the heap. From the heap. What is a heap? Heap is a form of memory. See, one second. There are a few different forms of memories called as heap, stack. Now, what you and queues as well. You don't have to get confused with all these terminologies. If you would catch this, it would be a great thing for your knowledge enhancements. Otherwise, for a time being, if you doesn't remember what was the name of that memory I have used and all, don't worry. Yesterday itself, see, there was one thing when I was describing you about, like, this is the ranges and this much of the memory is being occupied whenever a certain type of variable or data type has been stored in memory. But I told you, see, if you would learn this, it's a good thing. But if you do not remember all these figures, all these ranges, and how much amount of memory is being required, that's okay. That's okay. Why? Because we are not dealing with a procedure-oriented technology. And this is not our, this is not, what to say, this is not our overhead that we should remember all these while programming. Actually, we never bother about any ranges. We never bother about how much memory is getting consumed with this. Because this entire development, including editors, compilers, linkers, loaders, macro expansion, debuggers, everything, every system software tool which is required to perform the programming, we haven't installed that in our system. We are not dealing with an on-premise technology. We are dealing with something on cloud. And that is the reason, see, we don't have to really bother about any of this figure. Now, in the same way, in the same way, if you would remember, जैसा मैंने कहा अभी, what is a variable, whenever you declare a variable, it would define certain amount of memory. It would reserve certain amount of memory with that particular name. But where? In the heap. In the heap. So what is a heap, by the way? What is a heap, by the way? Heap is an enormous form of memory. Heap is an enormous form of memory into Apex runtime engine. Whenever you declare a variable, a very small portion of that is being reserved. A very small portion of that is being reserved. Right? So that is what it happens. Now, and what is the purpose of defining a variable? Variables are used to store one value of that particular data type. So how to define a variable? First of all, understand the syntax. And then we're going to talk more on this. And we're going to see a few examples as well. Whenever we are defining a variable, the first in the syntax, as you can see, is something called as access specifier. Access specifier is an optional thing. Access specifiers are optional. You can give this or you cannot give this. I mean, if you don't want, if you even forgot to mention the access specifier, that definition is perfect. It's not going to, Apex runtime engine would not going to give you any error. But in few of the cases, it becomes mandatory. We are going to talk on this as well. When at the time of variable declaration, giving access specifier is mandatory. Otherwise, for rest, all other cases, giving access specifiers are not mandatory. Now, one immediate question, what is an access specifier? Oh, we're going to talk about that as well. Right now, you can skip this for now. You can skip this for now and you can start concentrating from this value. So whenever we are defining a variable, I would start from data type. Right now, for a few days, for a few upcoming examples, I'm not going to make a use of access specifiers. And I would let you know where in the programming giving access specifier is required. Otherwise, you're going to see the errors. We're going to talk on that. So right now, we are going to skip this and we would start from data type. So the first thing, whenever you are defining a variable, the first thing is to mention the data type. Data type can be primitive, can be as object. Any one of this: string, ID, date, integer, long, Boolean, decimal, binary, large object, you can give it. All right. So the first thing to mention is always a data type followed by the variable name. Variable name is a custom thing. You can give whatever you want it to do. And then the value, equals to value. Now, value is also optional. At the time of defining a variable, whenever you are declaring a variable, you're defining a variable, that time you can give the value. Otherwise, you can give it later as well. It's not compulsory that when you are creating a variable, that time itself will have to give the value. No, it's not compulsory in Apex programming. I can define a variable without giving a value. Whenever we do that, it would always contain something called as null. In C++ and C programming and Java, unless you don't have any constructor, it would contain garbage value. But in Apex programming, it would contain specifically null. We're going to see that, don't worry. Now see, I'm defining in this example, I have defined two variables, num1 and num2. These are what? These are the names. And this is what? This is the data type. Integer is a data type. In first case, num1 has given a value. When you have defined this num1 as an integer, it must always contain an integer. The right-hand side value should always match to the data type what you have defined. If you try any experiment on this, you're going to get the error. Data type doesn't match, something like that. So if you are giving a value to a variable at any point of time, if you have defined a variable as integer, as a string, it must always have that corresponding value of the same data type. So if you have defined a variable as an integer, it must have integer only. If you have defined a variable as a string, it must contain a string value. You define a variable with date, ID, it must have the date, that value corresponding to its data type. If you tried any experiment, it's going to not accept this, rather it would going to throw you with the error. So that is what you have to define. All right, let me talk about one more thing. Usually we, in the programming, in our example, we give something called as num1, num2, test1, sample1. But naming conventions are very important. Nobody is going to taught you about this. Naming conventions, they are very important. Even when we were doing non-coding, even when we have learned so many features of Salesforce, so many functionalities, even 70 to 80% of functionalities of Salesforce, can be formed inside a product without writing a code. That is what is the beauty of Salesforce, right? So even in that time, whenever, if we were creating any, for example, any report, or maybe any business automation, maybe with workflows or with a process builder. So that time we have given this, we have used so many names, right? But I always, even that time also, I have told you that if you are giving a name, for example, you have defined, like you created workflows rules. What is happening here? All right. Just let me know whether, whether my screen is coming up or this audio is, everything is good at your end. Just let me know on to chat quickly. Is everything is good at your end? All right. Thank you so much. See, we have created few of the business automations, and you can see the names which I have given that time. New position assignment notification, new lead creation. What we have understood from all this. See, nobody would going to talk you that you should always give this name. But naming conventions, they are very important. You shouldn't try with any irrelevant name. If you are giving name to somebody, could be a variable, could be a process, anything from coding environment, anything other from the non-coding, whatever it would be. If you are giving a name, try to always give it which shows the meaning, which have a meaning. And whenever we read this, we should understand that this particular variable, maybe this particular process and everything, whatever, it is used for this purpose. So naming conventions, they are very important. All right, let's move on. See, so what is the syntax of defining a variable? The first thing is, like, you'll have to make sure that what is the data, what is the type of data I wanted to store inside the variable, and correspondingly, we have to match that data with the data type that we have in Salesforce, in the primitive or as object. If you wanted to store a number, a whole number, then prefer integer. If you wanted to store some characters, then prefer string. You wanted to store floating point numbers, decimal numbers, numbers that have point, then prefer decimal. You wanted to store date or date time, then accordingly select. You wanted to say store true and false, then select Boolean. So basically, you first of all would have to understand and match what you wanted to store accordingly, and wisely you have to select the data type of that particular variable. Understood? So this is the way. This is the way to define a variable. Now, if this would be any C programming, so I shall extend this discussion by saying, let's see what happens when you define an integer variable. It would consume 4 bytes of memory, and this memory would have an address. This memory would have an address, something like that. That address is the actual address of this, but because you have given a name of this variable as product code, now this memory would be referred as product code, and it is having a value as 10. It is having a value as 10. So I would extend this discussion a little bit more. But we certainly don't require to do that. Why? Because we are not dealing with a procedure-oriented language. All right. We just need to understand what is a variable, what is the purpose of variable in program, and how to define a variable, how to use a variable. Knowing that much is enough for us. All right. So this is how the variables are used to store the values. Wherever in a program you wanted to store certain amount of data, but variable can store only one value. What if more than one? There are two possibilities. For example, if I wanted to store 5 integer values, there are two possibilities. Either you should define 5 different variables for that, because one variable can hold only one value of integer, one value of string, one value of date, one value of boolean. Every variable, the final capacity of every variable is to store only one value. So if I wanted to hold 5 integers, there are two possible ways to do this. Either I can define 5 variables, 5 separate integer variables, or else you're going to learn something in a program called as collections, arrays, list, set, map. So we're going to discuss that as well. But right now you just concentrate on what is a variable, by the way. So variable is the way in a program to store one value of a particular data type. And how to define that? First of all, define a data type, give the name of variable. If you wanted the giving the values an optional entity, you can give it at the time of declaration. Otherwise you can give it later on in the program also. That is allowed. So these are some of the examples. Where I have first of all, like maybe at the time of declaring a variable also you can give a value, or you can simply declare the variable and later on in the program you can give them the value. That is also perfect. Salesforce allows you to do that. All right. So go with this all theory, read it once, and then let me start with the next thing as the operators. Now, whatever we have studied so far, first of all, data type. Data types, by knowing the knowledge of data types, we can store the numbers, we can store the values. For that, we would require variables. All right. Now, if for example, you have two integer variables, 25. The second integer variable is 39. Now, you wanted to perform certain operation between them. It could be anything. It could be a mathematical operation, could be a logical operation, could be anything. For example, I wanted to plus them. I wanted to add these two values. Or maybe I wanted to divide, I wanted to multiply, I wanted to subtract, whatever. So we started with like what are the different forms of data, then how to hold the data. What are the different forms of data? We run it in data types. How to hold the data, we learn it with the variables. Now, because now you're having that capability that you could hold the value. Why? Because you know how to define the variables and all. If you know how we can hold certain values, let's try to understand how we can perform certain operations on them. Now, this operation could be anything. Could be a arithmetic operation, could be a logical operation, or could be something else. Now, to perform such a kind of operations, there are few symbols and that present in every language, something called as operators. Operators are being defined into different categories based on what sort of operation, what sort of functionality, the facility it provides. For example, if you would use a symbol called as plus, minus, asterisk, and backslash, these are called as arithmetic operators or mathematical operators. Plus can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But this division, when you perform it with the backslash, forward slash, or not backslash, it would give you quotient. I mean, whenever you perform the division, I hope everyone knows this. For example, if I would divide 9, if I would divide it by 2, so it would be like 2 4s are 8. And what is remainder is 1. So this is my quotient, and this is remainder. When you would use this slash operator, forward slash, it would give you quotient. It would give you quotient. But there is one function. This is not operator. Listen this carefully. Listen this carefully. We are learning operators, but I am telling you function. There is a class called as math. I'm going to show you this. We are going to take examples on this, and with that example, it would become a practice for you. Don't worry. So there is a class, there is a method, there's a class called as maths, and there is a method inside that class. There is a method called as mod. What is a class? What is a method? Don't worry about this. All terminologies. Gradually, you would going to learn everything. You just have to keep patience. And that to be see, there are few of the things which I'll have to make you aware in the beginning, although that things come later. But that is what is the need of program. So sometime it might happen कि मैं आपको कुछ तो भी ऐसा पढ़ाऊंगा जो आगे के टॉपिक करेगा. I'll try to explain it as far as I can go. All right. So it would be something like, you wherever you are standing right now, you'll have to come 2 steps ahead. I'll try to, wherever I'm standing right now, I'll try to come 2 steps back. And there would be certainly we are going to, we are going to agree on a certain point of meeting at that time where your frequency matches with me. So programming ke liye, you cannot sit and say ki mere ko nahi aata, I'm not going to do this. If you sit with this mentality, better you quit it right now. अगर आप इस mentality के साथ बैठोगे तो you're not going to learn it, and you will not going to learn anything with this type of mentality. If you wanted to learn something, what it could be anything, not just with the Salesforce, it could be anything in your life. If you wanted to learn, you'll always have to have the tendency. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a student, and I'm here to learn this. I don't know this, and that is the reason I am here to learn this. I wanted to learn this. If you have this tendency, you can learn gradually. Some of you might learn in the very first program. Some of them would require 2 to 3 programs. All right. But ultimately, if you don't convince yourself that this is something which you cannot do unless you can learn, otherwise you are going to sit in the place where you are right now. All right. So please don't have this tendency in mind. Never. All right. So math.mod. Math is a class, standard class. Mod is a method. We're going to see what is it is. But right now, if you would use this for division, it would give you reminders. We're going to have practice programs on this, and we're going to see that. All right. So these operators are called as arithmetic operators up to this: plus, minus, asterisk, and then a forward slash. They are called to be what? They are called as arithmetic operations. Accordingly, they perform the operations. Now, this less than equals to, greater than equals to, double equals to, not equals to, they are called as relational or comparison operators. With this, we can perform certain comparisons between two values. Less than equals to, greater than equals to, double equals to is used for text comparison, not equals to, and then there is a function. Like over here, there was a function. There's a class called as math. There's a function called as mod. It also performed division. Like this symbol, this operator also performed division. Similarly, this method also performed division between the two values. But this would give you question, this would produce you reminders. Similarly, there is a method called as equals. Equals, system class ki method. So it would give you, this also performs comparison between two values. This would also perform comparison between two values. But then there is a difference. This would perform something called as binary comparison or ASCII comparison. And this would perform something called as text comparison. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean? See, let me try to define first of all this. When you use double equals to in a program, let's say you are having two string values, string 1 and string 2. String 1 contains hello, but in small, all characters are in the small letters. String 2 also contains hello, but then all characters are in uppercase. They are caps. If I would compare, if I would see what is this character, what is this text, it is H. Over here, this is also H. So if you would write a string, if you would use this operator double equals to, like if string 1 equals to string 2, it would going to give you the answer same, true. It would return binary true. That according to this string and this string, they are same. Because it performed the text comparison, text. What is this text? In the first position, what it is? H. It won't mind whether the H is a small h or capital H. Now it would go to the second string. This would perform position by position, character by character. What is the element? What is the character in the first position in the string 2? It is also H. All right. What is the character in the second position in string 1? It is E. What is the character in second position in string 2? It is also E. So accordingly, it would perform this comparison and it would at the end, it would result, yeah, both of them are same. So this is what does it means by double equals to. Whereas if you would give this under equals function, अच्छा एक चीज और सुनो, फंक्शन या मेथड किसी के नाम के आगे, इफ यू सी, किसी के भी नाम के आगे, ठीक है, इफ यू वुड सी ये सिंबल ओपनिंग एंड क्लोजिंग ब्रैकेट वाला सिंबल, राउंड ब्रैकेट क्या बोलते हैं इसको, कुछ भी बोलते हैं, wherever you see this, you will have to give a name. This is a method. This is a method. This is a method. Wherever you see this opening and a closing bracket, this is a method. You'll have to give this is a method. So equals is a method, by the way. Equals is a method. You can see opening and a closing bracket. Equals is a method. So if I would give string 1 and string 2 under equals method, so it would rather perform something called as ASCII comparison. ASCII. What is an ASCII? ASCII stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. What is this is used for? See, every key inside your keyboard is having a fixed number. That number is something called as ASCII value. And this is fixed for this is universally accepted. There is only one country, China, they doesn't use ASCII. They have their own technology. That is the reason their technology doesn't goes out from their country. And they are doing this from very long back, from their ancestors to ancestors to ancestors. They are doing this. You know, the gunpowder, barud jisko bolte hain, they have been invented in China long back when the whole world doesn't use to those. Unhone kafi pehle invent kar rakha tha, but they don't believe in transferring their technologies. And there are so many things. Their martial arts, or rather their cultures and all. And that was, I mean, you can simply understand the mentality why they have built up that China wall. Because they don't wanted inventors to come in their country and learn their culture, or rather their people should go to outside world. So they have this introvert mindset. Let it be. We are not talking about culture of China. I'm just wanted to say that ASCII is universally accepted. Every country is following the same thing, except China. They have their own technology. So let it be, chodo. So every key inside keypad of your keyboard having a code, and that code is called as ASCII. And by the way, it is different for capital A and small a. If you wanted, you can go and Google this. You're going to find a suitable table for that. For capital A, I think it is 67 or something. 41, 65. No, it's actually 65. It is actually 65. This is hexadecimal. The second position is in hexadecimal. वो छोड़ दो, आपको पता नहीं चलेगा hex क्या होता है. And then A is 97. See, capital A is having a value 65. And small a is having a value called 97. Accordingly, like B is having 66, 67, 68. This is what. Now see, the text seems to be same. Text seems to be same. Capital A, small a. Text comparison mein both of them are same. But when we compare the ASCII values, capital A is having certain different ASCII value small. Similarly, capital H is having 72, small h is having certain another value, 68. If I would ask you, is 72 equals to 68? Your answer would be no, they are two different values. So that is the reason when you use equals function, it would return that these two strings are not equal. They are different rather. They are different. They are different rather. So it would be going to give you the answer that they are There are two different strings. That is what is the difference between equals method and equals operator, right? Then there are a few operators like increment, decrement. Plus is used for increment the value by 1. For example, you define a variable of data type as integer. The name of variable is customer age, the value is 24. After that, if you had like given customer age plus, customer age plus. So this plus would increment the value as 1. Previously, it was 24. After giving this variable name is customer age, then giving plus. So it would increment this value by 1. So 24 plus 1 would give you 25. 24 plus 1 give you 25. So plus is used for incrementing by 1. Minus is used for decrementing by 1. But let's say if I wanted to either increment or decrement by a certain amount of value. If I wanted to increment this with 10 is I'm going to write customer age plus for 10 times, customer age plus like this, because plus would increment it by 1. If I wanted to increment this 10 times, it is something like I'm going to write this statement for next 10 times? No, obviously not. There must be some workaround for this. Yes, we have something called as plus equals to or minus equals to. So when you use this plus equals to, you can specify the value of like plus equals to how much value you wanted to increment this. Minus equals to how much value you wanted to decrement this. So if I would write down like something like, plus equals to 10. So the resultant value in that case would be like, now your customer age, the variable customer age would have the value as 34. Would have the value as 34 because you incremented it by 10, right? So that is what is the purpose of plus and then minus, and then we have plus equals to and then minus equals to. So what they would give, increment by a specific value and similarly decrement by a specific value. So if I wanted to do this, if I wanted to do this, so we will going to make a use of plus equals to or minus equals to. Minus equals to like this, all right? That is what is an increment, decrement. Let's come to logical operator. See, if there are two conditions, all right, what is condition, how to impose, we're going to learn that. And if you wanted that both of them should fulfill, like condition 1 and condition 2, if both of them would true, then execute certain functionality. I think we did this with you created, see, banking accounts and hot rating. How would you have created, how you have imposed the conditions? Say industry should be banking and rating should be hot. Now this is these are two conditions, and means this both of them should satisfy. Industry must equals to banking and rating must equals to hot. Either of the condition, if either of one would fall, this condition is not going to return you true. So if between two conditions, if I wanted to check that both of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 10 of them, all of them should true, then I would introduce and between them. That is what is the purpose of having and logical operator. If you want either of the conditions, you can go with or. Right? So or what it would give? Either of. So if industry would be banking or rating would be hot, either of one condition would satisfy, it's going to return you true. If you wanted to a negate value, that not of condition, like I would introduce that phone should not equals to blank. I wanted to see a value where phone should not equals to blank. Phone should be there. So if you wanted to see for negate values, then we go with not. So these are 3 logical operators. All right. Then assignment, we already talk about this. Plus equals to, minus equals to. And beyond that, it's multiplication, division equals to. This would increment and assigned, decrement and assign, multiplication and assign, divide and assign. So these are the assignment operators. Plain assignment is equals to. Plain assignment, like num1 equals to 50. So it would assign 50 to num1. String 1 equals to Kasim. So it would assign Kasim to string 1. All right. So that is what is an equals to is. So this is what is about operators and all. Tomorrow, I would take you to a small program and we're going to see how to print the outputs and everything, whatever has been written over here, execute anonymous window and everything. I'm going to talk this directly with this example. All right, that's all for today. Let me give you this command. You can now unmute yourself. All right, guys, I'm good for the day. If you have anything to ask, please go ahead.
So, session has not been uploaded yet.
Have you
Second.
checked it?
Yes, sir.
When?
It is in process actually.
I uploaded this yesterday night. How come this should be in process?
No, sir, it's already updated. I
That is
watched.
what I'm telling you. That's why I asked you when you have checked it. I did
Before
this
class
yesterday.
only, sir. It is showing just processing
Okay.
in my drive.
Maybe it's opening. Yeah. See, it's opening. No, it's not opening.
Let me check, sir, once.
All right. If it don't, I would going to upload this once again. No problem. Yes. Anything else? All right then. Thank you so much for joining.